How do you motivate yourself to start right now on a project that you have been dreading and putting off for a long time? Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's your first time here. My name is Sarah Beyer. I'm a certified life and business coach. I help heart-centered service providers, spiritual practitioners, and creatives build the lives and businesses of their dreams. And this topic is really important to me. I work with people all the time on getting to their goals, whatever those goals are. And a big part of getting ourselves to our goals is making ourselves do the things. And for creative people, making ourselves do the things is sometimes really challenging. If you're any type of neurospicy, making yourself do the things can be extra challenging. But what I have found is that there are a few main difficulties in making ourselves do the thing that come up and can sometimes be a little fly in the ointment of getting ourselves started. One thing is perfectionism, of course, and the other is not really differentiating between a project and a task. So when I can tell that we're having a hard time differentiating between a project and a task, it might look like this. Someone makes a to-do list of things they need to get done in their business, and it's like, email that client back a proposal, start my blog, um, send an invoice, open up my business bank account, batch my content, whatever. Pretty much everything on that list was a project and not a task. And the way we can tell the difference between a project and a task is that a project has more than one task in it. That's it. If it's got more than one task in it, it's a project. So for instance, even taking out my trash is a project and not a task. I can think of it as a task, but what is involved in real life, right? I have to take the full trash out. I have to tie it. Usually then I like put it on the porch so that my cats don't mess with it. Then I have to get a new trash bag out. I have to put that in the bin. I put that away. And then I have to take the full trash bag from my front door to the dumpster and come back. So each of those things could be broken up, right? And usually they are. I don't know how you live, but I live at the top of stairs far from my dumpster. So frequently I take out the trash, I tie it off, I put it on the front steps, and then that part of the task is done. And then I don't complete it. I don't complete the project until the next time I'm already going outside to go into my car, and then I take it out. So it's not just the task of take out the trash, it is the project of take out the trash that has multiple tasks inside it. If we're writing something like start blog, and they're like, I keep putting that off. A lot of times the reason we're putting it off is that start blog is actually a very big project with tons of little tasks inside of it. But because we're not articulating what each of those tasks is and writing them down, we're not getting the fun dopamine of like crossing the small things off the list. We're not building any momentum. But we also may not even be able to fully conceive of what the steps are inside that project. And so we look at it and we're like, oh, that just feels big, and we just keep putting it off. So what we want to do is break start blog down into every single task we can think of, every step we can think of that goes inside that project. So it might be decide on the name for my blog, figure out where my blog is going to be hosted, create an account for that blog, make sure that it's linked to my website and my URL, write 3 to 5 blog posts, edit those blog posts, schedule those blog posts, create a graphic for them, right? There's actually a ton of steps involved in that, and some of them may not be very fast steps. So if we are struggling to find the motivation to do a project, we want to make sure that we are actually writing down for ourselves for clarity, what is every single step I can think of involved in getting this thing done? And how do I map that out for myself so that I can do just one bit at a time? Maybe even spread them across multiple days or multiple weeks if it turns out that there's a lot of time-consuming steps inside this project. That usually helps a lot to get us moving on things. I'm going to come back to this in a second because I do want to touch on perfectionism. A lot of the time, if somebody is struggling to get motivated to do something that they want to do, if we scratch a little bit underneath, we're going to find a little bit of perfectionism. So we're telling ourselves the story that it's not just enough that this thing get done, it has to get done really well, it has to be perfect, it has to be well executed, it has to be this, it has to be that, it has to be impressive, it has to be good. It's not enough to make a reel, it has to be the best reel you've ever made. It's not enough to send an email, it has to be the best email you've ever written. And so we want to make sure that we are embracing a done is better than perfect motto in our business. Yes, we want things to be good, but we also want things to get done. And so sometimes we need to do a little check-in, either with our coach or our mentor, with a friend, even with our journal, about like, what am I telling myself that this thing needs to be that is preventing me from doing it, because it already feels big and daunting because of how much pressure I'm putting on the finished product of the thing that I haven't even started yet. How can we loosen that up? I have other videos about perfectionism, but just going into it with experimentation. The goal is to get something done and then I can edit it, then I can refine it, but I need to loosen up my expectations around the finished product so that I can just start a draft, do a first round of the thing. So I want to come back to the breaking things down into smaller pieces thing. And I want to introduce one of my favorite concepts. It's something that I coined, I use it all the time, and it's something that I call the art of underdoing it. The art of underdoing it is about breaking something down until you find a task in the project that you feel no resistance to. So I'll use an example from my real life. I'm writing a book. And so sometimes I'll write like work on book. And I'm like, that is too generic. It's too vague. It's too big. Work on book is not a task. Work on book is a big project. And it's even bigger because in my head, I'm perfectionistic about how I want my book to be so good, blah, blah, blah. What I want to do if I am feeling a lot of resistance around doing this project is I want to keep going down the list of chunking this down into a smaller task until I find one that I feel no resistance to. So I might say, how about if I just open up the Google Doc and I work on it for 30 minutes? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. That still sounds overwhelming. It still sounds like too much. And I'm like, okay, great. Can I open the Google Doc and edit the last thing I wrote for 15 minutes? No, I still don't want to do that. That still feels too much for me. Okay. Can I open the Google Doc? Yes, I feel no resistance to that. Okay, great. That's all we'll do. We're going to open the Google Doc and we're going to sit here and look at it. Now, once it's open, I might be a little bit more willing to do a little something. But if the only goal was open the Google Doc and I did it, I get to celebrate the win. So I also used to do this with yoga. If you are a movement person or an exercise person, I used to have this goal that I was going to do yoga every day. But what yoga every day meant in my head was it had to be this hour-long, intense, sweaty practice. And then I would avoid it sometimes if I didn't feel like I had that much energy. And then I realized that having this big expectation of what yoga every day meant was preventing me from doing the real thing that was important to me, which was get on the mat. And so I made a rule with myself that I would get on my mat every day, even if it meant I sat crisscross applesauce on my mat and did breathing for a couple of minutes. It counts. I did it. Even if I got on my mat and I did Shavasana with a blanket on me for 5 minutes, that was yoga and I did it. And especially on days where I felt like I don't have time to do anything, those are probably the things I needed the most, was just a pause to be on my mat. And so the idea of the art of underdoing it is to kind of circumvent the resistance that you're feeling in your brain by just breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down until you finally find something that you feel no resistance to and saying, okay, we're going to let that be enough. It isn't, the goal is not to trick yourself. If when you do that much, you find you now feel more inspiration and energy to do more, great, do more. If you don't, you celebrate that you did as much as you did, and then the next day you try to come back, or later that day you try to come back and you find the next thing that you feel no resistance to, and you do that step. This is really, really helpful, especially if you are a person who has pathological demand avoidance. or you feel rebellious even to yourself about things that you want to do. Many of us who are neurosquiggly have a thing of just like anything that I tell myself to do, I'm just going to say no. And it's inconvenient, but there is a way that you can work with it and a way that you can manage it. I think for a lot of us, I don't want to get too deep into like inner teenager work, but if you have a very rebellious inner teenager or a teenager who felt like when you were a teenager, you felt like your boundaries and your needs and your no was not taken seriously. There is a part of us sometimes that just needs to be rebellious and say no and know that we're not going to get in trouble for it. And so for me, sometimes when I have this really strong, I don't want to energy, I need to just tell myself like, okay, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and you're not going to get in trouble. But you could do it if you want, right? You don't have to, but you can if you want, is a very common motivation technique that I use for myself in my business. So, okay, you don't have to send any emails today, but you can if you want. And then I'll like sit on the couch and cross my arms and be like, well, fine, then I'm not going to. And I'll be like, okay. And I can feel like part of me is waiting for like the pressure, the lecture, but you have to. And I don't give it to myself. I just say, okay, if you don't want to, you don't have to. And then after probably about 30 minutes of pouting, I'm like, "Ugh, okay, fine, I'll send the emails." I usually just need my no to have space to be acknowledged. So I just kind of want to offer that as well, is that like you don't necessarily need to be coerced all the time into doing things you don't want to do. Sometimes the healing that we are looking for in our business is showing ourselves that our no and our boundary is important and is sacred to us, and that we will honor our own no. So I'm offering you that as well sometimes. If you need to be motivated to do something that you don't want to do, and you've been in a wrestling match with yourself over it, you're guilting, blaming, or shaming yourself for not doing it. Sometimes it's okay to just be like, hey, you don't have to if you don't want to. And let your brain be like, wait, what's the catch? And be like, no catch. You don't have to if you don't want to, but you can if you want to. Here's your laptop. I'm just going to sit it right here, right? This is like a kid with dinner. You're like, you don't have to eat if you don't want to. I'm just going to leave your dinner right here on the table and I'm walking away. And if you eat it, you eat it. We'll see what happens. I don't know if you were parented like that, but it's a thing. So those are my suggestions. Art of underdoing it. Embrace play, experimentation, and getting a first draft done. Remove expectation or perfectionism around the finished product. Break projects down into tasks and let those tasks get incrementally smaller until you can hack your own resistance. And then finally, for the really tough cases, you don't have to, but you can if you want. And then just leave it there and wait and see if your inspiration comes after a little while. Okay, those are my suggestions. I would love to hear how this lands for you in the comments. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you try any of these techniques and which one works the best for you. Like, share, subscribe. Okay, love you. Bye.